Hello everyone, this is Serious Trivia. Welcome to a new series on the channel. This will be Lessons from the Battlefield, where we talk about how battles work in the game. We'll be just jumping into different battles that I played to talk about different concepts. This is a relatively new idea, and I still haven't got the organization down, so it might be a lot of rambling, but bear with me. I'll be sharing a lot of information about how this game works in terms of the battle mechanisms. So this battle right here is the first battle that you will play as Liu Bei. This is Zhao Bo over here. This is the unit that's standing in front of you when you first start the campaign. If we take a look at his unit composition, he has 2 units of peasant spearmen, 2 units of peasant warriors, and 2 units of peasant archery, and he's a general leading them. If you look at the number here, it tells you he's a level 2 general, and this is a generic information screen. I usually like to switch it to the expanded stats. So here you can see that for this general, he has 38 morale. Morale, when it drops to 0 or negative, the unit will waver and rout. They will give up the fight even though they still have units, they still have health points. Next, so we go into hit points or health point here. He has 22,000 hit points. This number will change depending on what size of unit you're using. Here, if you see our unit size, we are running the large unit size, which is the middle setting. If you are playing extreme unit size, that's double the unit size that I have here. So G militia for you would be 240 men, and the hit point would be twice this number. It would be 144,000 hit points. So if we go, let's, instead of going back, let's just look at our own unit. Let's just look at this G militiaman over here. So the game gives you a pretty good description of the units in the info panel. So you have the level of the unit. It shows you how much experience is needed to reach the next level, how many units are soldiers are still alive in the unit, how many kills the unit has inflicted, and what the role of the unit is in the game, as well as any weakness. So the role of the G militiamen are all-rounders. They're good at pretty much everything. They are especially good against cavalry. This is a green unit. Green units are considered spear units in the game. Spearmen have a passive that when they are standing still, they are considered braced. So here you see that buff because they're standing still. It's called charge reflection versus mounted. So it reflects the charge damage of any mounted attacker back onto them when braced. Braced just means not moving. So standing like this would be braced. If you march them forward and the cavalry charge at you, then you lose this, I guess, this passive skill, and you don't reflect any charge damage back to the cavalry, which really makes you the role of being good against mounted units less effective when you're moving them around against enemy cavalry. Since it is a militia unit, they're the lowest tier units, they cannot adopt any advanced formations. They can, however, use loose. In most of your game, you're probably not going to be able to use loose in the first battle. I was just fortunate enough to pick up ancillary item, a follower, the military instructor, as an item that started out in this campaign. So I put him on Zhang Fei. So this enables a loose formation for your units. If you look here, loose formation, they basically just spread your unit out. We can do it real quick. This is the loose formation button. You push it, you see you're scattered your troops. What's good about this is that if you read the thing, there's nothing good about it apparently. It says in phase 2, you have minus 100% charge resistance. So when the enemy unit, whether it's infantry or cavalry, charges into you, the charge damage is doubled, essentially, or you lose whatever charge resistance you have. So why do people do this? It's because if you're getting hit by projectile like arrows, they're harder to connect with your unit when you're in loose formation. But don't have this on when you're engaging the enemy. Alright, so we'll start here. I grouped the units according to the retinue they belong to. So this group belongs to Liu Bei's retinue. I did this so that the stats can be easily compared to. So under Liu Bei, let's start here. Liu Bei is a commander. Commanders provide buffs to their units, as in their special ability here. When you hover it, you see the range of your active ability when you can use it. You impact every unit that has its icon glowing gold right now. Right, all these units that's glowing gold will receive this buff. The Stone Bark buff will provide 100% range block chance. So this basically makes the troops that receive this immune to arrows for 30 seconds. And also it allows Unbreakable. Unbreakable basically prevents your unit from routing. So this unit here can rout once their morale goes down to 0 or below. There are many things that impact morale. We'll get into it when we see it on the battlefield. But other than taking out the health point all the way to 0, or essentially wiping out the unit, by knocking the morale to 0, you force the unit to rout off the battlefield, essentially defeating them. That's 2 ways to defeat the unit, and that kind of covers our first 2 stat line here. Moving on, we have the melee charge bonus and the melee attack rate. So the melee charge bonus here is the amount of damage you do when you are charging into the enemy unit. Now charging just means you're getting a little running start. So like if we are attacking and we select the enemy unit and running into them, that impact is the charge damage. This is mainly designed for cavalry units. If you see here, the charge damage is quite huge, 179 versus this G Militia, which has a charge damage 21. So basically G Militia are not exactly designed for you to charge at enemy units. They're mainly designed to be anti-cavalry. They can charge at enemy units. You know, they're not as bad as, let's say, this archery unit that just has 11. So that's what charge damage does. And this is also the damage that's reflected back when you're braced. So if this cavalry unit charges directly into me when I'm braced, this 179 would not be impacted onto my G Militia unit, but rather reflected back on them, and it will be, you know, a heavy loss for the cavalry unit that charges into a braced spear formation. Not really formation, just spear unit that's standing still. Now you never ever want to charge your cavalry into a standing still spear formation. Let's continue. The melee attack rate determines how many times a unit can attack over a minute. This is basically your attack speed. The higher this number is, the more swings you get out in a minute. Next is melee damage base and melee damage armor piercing. So if you read the description, base damage, it can be blocked and is reduced by armor. So this is a damage you do that can be blocked by the enemy and is automatically reduced by how much armor the enemy have. Armor piercing damage goes fully through the armor but still can be blocked. So you're essentially doing both of these damage at the same time. So against the enemy that has 0 block chance and 0 armor, you'll be doing 46 damage per swing, per unit. But if the enemy have percentage armor, which you can see here, so let's say this G Militia has 20% armor, you'll be reducing this number by 20%. This 23 would still go through, so your total damage would be, assuming you don't get blocked, would be 80% of 23 here plus another 23. Okay, so that's damage in a nutshell. And then you have melee evasion base. This increased the chance of evading melee damage from the front and side. Enemy charge bonus decreases it. Okay, so melee evasion here is basically your ability to dodge an attack, right? This, you just have to note that this is only from the front and the side. So if you get a flank off from behind, it would ignore melee evasion, right? You're getting 100% hits from behind the unit. Melee evasion shield. The G militiaman doesn't have a shield. The shield provides a higher melee evasion because you have a shield, but only towards the front because your shield is facing front. It makes sense. So the Saber cavalry unit here has a shield. If you zoom in and look at them, and also from the icon, it has a shield. So you see they get 20% melee evasion with shield. It's a bigger number. And the Saber militia here without the horses also get the same 20%. So apparently this little round shield is worth 20% melee evasion. Okay, going back to our G militia, we talked about armor. Decreases standard melee range and explosion damage. Doesn't help against armor piercing damage. So this will prevent or decrease all of the type of damage listed here. Melee against other melee unit, range against arrow, and explosion against trebuchet or siege weapon damage. Shield armor. So this adds to your armor. So these are all additive stats. Decreases standard melee and range damage from the front. Doesn't help against armor piercing damage. So once again, this is front only. This is on all sides. So this is essentially armor you wear. This is armor provided by your shield. So if you look here, the idea here is you would have 30% armor towards the front and 25% armor everywhere else. That's how you should read these pairs of stats. Lastly, you have range block chance. This increases the chance of evading damage from non-artillery projectile, so arrows basically. Arrows and crossbow, bolts. Since you don't have, this is largely dependent on shield. Since G militia units have no shield, they get 0% to evade damage from non-artillery projectiles. This doesn't mean if arrows shoot at you, every single arrow from the enemy will hit you. This just means when the projectile comes and the physics engine determines that it hits you, you have 0 chance to evade that damage. You'll get hit if your model gets hit by an arrow. Now if you spread them out, like in loose formation, and arrows, one volley, some will hit the ground, those won't do damage to you. If you look at, we go back to the Saber cavalry, it has a shield. Saber cavalry have very high range block chance. So even if the arrow hits your model, there's 65% chance that you will simply evade that damage. Right? This is your range block chance, and here is your melee block chance, melee evasion. Right? So melee evasion from the front, 29%. So you have the 29% of avoiding both the base melee damage and the armor piercing damage. So this is like a dodge, and this is a reduction based on your armor. That kind of covers unit stats. The last one is running speed. This can change depending on what terrain you are, and also depending on how tired your unit is. If you hover over the unit card, you see currently it's fresh. The leg icon, those are little legs. As you battle, as you run, you're going to get more exhausted. As you stand still, you rest back up. This affects how effective your unit act is, and mainly affects your running speed. Obviously the horses here run faster. So let's talk, we looked at G militia, let's talk about range units. They're a little bit different than your melee units. They have a little bit different stats. Once again, you have your morale, you have your hit points. This is a melee charge bonus. So this is when you go into melee mode. When you're holding a bow, you wouldn't have these normal stats you have on the other troops. You can switch to swords here. and you can turn off your firing. And then these are essentially little swordsmen now. You wouldn't want to do this with most of your archers. Liu Bei's special unit, the E marksman here, is a very powerful unit that have very decent melee stats. But that's really not what their function is in your army. But they are very, very good at fighting hand to hand. If you notice, they have not only decent damage, decent charge, they have 43% melee evasion base damage. So when they're engaged in the enemy, you're avoiding 43% of the time the enemy damage on you. Very, very strong. Compare this to the Ji Militia of 6%. You're going to be very, very strong against melee hand-to-hand combat. But we're here to mainly look at range. So let's talk about the range. The range stats happen after the melee block chance, the range block chance that is shared between melee and range units. First, you have this range attack rate. This determines how many times you can fire over a minute. It's basically your speed, volley speed, how fast you can draw, nuke, and fire. Here is your base range damage as well as armor piercing damage. These work exactly the same way as the melee damages. You add them up. This is reduced by armor. This goes through armor. Both can still be avoided by range block chance. This is the range of the unit. This determines how far out you can shoot. It's designated by this green, I guess, what shape is this? This is a slice of a circle, an arc, a pie. I have no idea how to call that, but it's determined by this green line here. It's anything within this line is within your range. This number right here is your ammunition. This is how many times you can fire. This unit can fire 33 times before it runs out of arrows, and then you're forced to just use this as a regular sword unit. This is their running speed. So the description is also here. Their role is rear line, best place behind to do damage to relative safety, good in melee, weak against cavalry. So basically, cavalry charges are devastating to archers, especially because when they're still firing, they're just holding a bow, so they don't have any of these melee damage stats. And when they receive the charge, it has a huge impact on their units. You're essentially taking all the damage because you don't have that brace buff, so you're taking giant chunks of charge damage when they come at you. And Liu Bei has two cavalry units. These are saber cavalry. As you see, these are E marksmen. Both of these don't have militia in their name, so they're a more advanced unit. This is called a medium sword cavalry. They're light, medium, and heavy. This is like a mid-tier cavalry units, and this is a mid-tier, but this is essentially a faction unique unit, and it's the high end of the faction unique unit. You have E archer, E marksman. This is the E marksman. Let's take a look at our other two groups. Zhang Fei here, it's red, he's a vanguard. He excels at killing enemy troops. If you look at general stats are quite inflated. Like the base damage here, 2.6 thousand base damage, compared to this guy right here, 23. So you're gonna be doing a lot more damage with your generals. This is romance mode, just in case you didn't know. Romance mode, your general characters or hero characters are just ridiculously strong, and you can utilize that in battle, and you should, especially early on. So he also has Ji militiamen, 2 of these, and 2 saber militiamen. If you notice something real quick, the Ji militiamen here under Zhang Fei has 42 morale. The Ji militiaman under Liu Bei has 56 morale. You see the green numbers here, they have a base value. The base value for the unit are the same because they're both level 1 units. But the boost, the others, comes from the yellow stat that is that your generals have. The higher the yellow stat, the higher it's authority, I believe. The higher the authority stat, the more morale you provide to your own retinue. So Liu Bei's unit is going to have higher retinue than Zhang Fei's unit here, just even the same level. Other than that, they're essentially the same. Every other stat is the same. Run speed is a little different, which is interesting. I don't know why. Oh, I do know why. Liu Bei also has an ability. I believe it's called mobility, fittingly. I think it increases your unit's run speed by 25%. So I think that explains the 10 difference here, 25% increase from the 38. So basically your general's abilities that you get from leveling up, some of them will impact your retinue, some of them impact your whole army, right? Own retinue is your own retinue here. Own army is your whole army here. And when commanding the army is whoever is in the first slot in the army panel. So here I make Guan Yu my commander. So any when commanding buffs are given from Guan Yu. If Liu Bei has a when commanding buff because it's not commanding, the buff will be not active. So the role of your different infantry unit here, these purple saber militiamen has shield and a saber. They are excellent at blocking arrows. The 50% block chance. Ji militiamen, 0. Right? They're all rounders. These guys are assault and missile defense. So they're good at missile defense. They're also good at assault. They have good charge damage. 84 for infantry charge. 84 is quite high. And they also have good attack speed as well as good evasion stats. So add these together, you have 38% from the front and base of 18%. So you're avoiding a lot of the damage. You have decent armor, and so basically you're good at getting in there and fighting the enemy. Well, these guys, once they go in, you can't avoid a lot of damage, so you're going to take a lot of damage. So these guys, in terms of defense, is really weak, right? You have no way to block arrows, and once you're in a battle, you can't dodge attacks either. These saber cavalry units are missile defense plus anti-missile. So the idea is that they have 65% missile block chance. So if you are able to run them behind into the enemy archers, your charge damage will devastate the archers, and on your way there, the shield will help you block the arrow damage. Archers' job, stay in the back, shoot at enemy. I really like using ranged units in the game because if you think about it, you can't avoid casualties when you're sending melee units into combat, right? You guys are in hand-to-hand combat. If you want, you clash this group into another group. If you want to chew through their group, even if you're better, you're going to be taking damage. Archers, on the other hand, if they stand back, they're safe. No one's going to die. And all your arrows going to do the maximum damage they can do. So I prefer using ranged units, but we don't get to choose our army composition for this first battle. Guan Yu here, quick look, has 2 Ji militiamen, same thing as the other ones here. He also has the mobility skill, I believe, and so he has the fast moving speed, and he has the archer units. So if you notice the archer units, these guys have 20 ammo. This guy has 33. It doesn't show you the base amount. Obviously, since these are E-marksmen, these are archer militia, or the lowest tier archers. These obviously will have less ammo, but the base ammo is there's a difference, but there's also a difference in the other value. The other values here is determined by your cunning or blue stat. That's why strategists specialize in range units. The higher your cunning stat is, the more ammo you get. Okay, so we talked about battle. So in this battle here, we're against Zhao Bo. He has, as we said, 2 peasantry spearmen. If you take a look, they're basically kind of like our Ji militia. They have no block chance and no shield. They have even lower armor than our Ji militia. At least our Ji militia have 20%. It has a little bit better melee evasion, a lot of armor piercing damage, right? So this is strong. If you have the same total value compared to other units and most of your damage is on armor piercing, then you're going to do more. It's not very good at charge, but it's basically designed to be another charge reflect mounted unit. So these are anti-cavalry. You don't want to run your cavalry into them when they're standing still and braced. These are peasant warriors. They are basically almost the same as our saber militia, except for, if you notice, they don't carry shield. Their weapon is a hoe or a pitchfork. These are farmers, right? Yellow Turban Rebellion is a farmer rebellion. They use rakes. I think I saw a hoe somewhere. That's a hoe, and that's a pitchfork. So these guys and these guys will not do well against archers. And these guys would also additionally not do well against cavalry because they don't have the brace stat, because they're not considered a spearman, even though their weapon looks kind of like a spear to me. Lastly, you have these peasant archers. So the damage is listed here. It's actually quite high damage. These are our biggest threat in this battle. They're going to cause, if we don't take care of these, they will cause the most damage to us. Once again, these are weak against cavalry or anything that charge into them. Actually, the key is breaking down that distance that they're keeping with you. So cavalry are best at doing that. The enemy general here has some stats. His damage is much lower than our damage. We looked at Zhang Fei's damage, Liu Bei's damage, and Guan Yu's damage. They're all multiples of his. Since this is the first battle, the AI will let you duel the guy. We'll talk about dueling a little bit later. But yeah, so the idea that we're going to do in this battle is I'm going to show you guys how to think about minimizing your loss. And that's how really I play these battles. And also, I go ahead and think about my campaign. These are units that are given to you to start the campaign, but these are not the units that you're going to be continuing the campaign with. I don't want to have what they decided for me as the retinue, so I actually will pick out the ones that I want to level up to go with me into this fight, and the rest I'll just keep them in reserve and hold them in the back, because I don't want to give them experience, right? Because I'm going to be disbanding them or replacing them with other units later. So that's the idea, and plus this battle is easily won. We have 3 times the amount of men. Actually, not that much. They have 6 units, we have 4 each, so 2 times the amount of men. But we have 3 generals, and all 3 are better than his. As a matter of fact, I can win this battle with just 3 generals. These 3 can more than take this army right here, no problem. But that's not really a battle tutorial, that's more a hero tutorial. We will take these guys with us. Right? These guys will take with us. These guys will hold in reserve. We'll hide them in a forest. Right? So this is a forest. We haven't talked about terrain yet. So if you hover over these different terrains, they'll give you what they do if it has any special effect. So forest here, because of the trees, if you zoom in, they're literally standing in the forest. These are short forests, I guess. Here's a tall tree. But anyways, 2 effects. One, it conceals your unit by the little eye icon here. The enemy can't see them unless they walk into the forest to look at them or walk really close to the forest. You can move when you're concealed within the forest, and there you'll still be concealed, but once you pop out, you'll be revealed. The strong point here is that if, let's say, I put my conceal unit here and march them slowly down here, they won't notice until I pop out over here, right? You get an easy way to flank. Might require you to micro units along just so they don't peek out, but that's the idea. Also, they give, if you hover, they give plus 25% range resistance. So here they're saying the arrows will have a hard time finding the target in the forest. Makes a lot of sense, right? So you get range protection when you're in the forest, when they're shooting at you, as well as, but you get minus 10% speed for medium infantry and minus 10% melee evasion for medium infantry. So we talked about medium, so medium bow infantry here, that's a medium infantry. The militia are light infantry, so they're not affected by the forest. But the if you hover them when you select the light infantry, it doesn't show you the movement speed debuff, but a medium one they will show you. Right? If you put a cavalry unit in, right, it'll show you the cavalry debuff. So you're getting decrease in speed and decrease in melee evasion. Okay. So, why am I fighting with this group of unit here? I think it's more than enough, and also I want to give these units experience. I want to keep these units going forward in my campaign. That's really not a battle thing, so let's just pretend we only have this group with us, and the rest of these guys, I'm gonna group them. So you can group units using the control. You hold down control and you pick a number. So here I'm gonna group them as group 9. So hit control 9. Now they're grouped, so you can see them separated from the force here, and you can quickly select them by pushing the number. So if I hit 9, I select all of them. You can also put them into different formations. Right now they're all lined up kind of like in a line. If I'm happy with this formation, I can lock it by clicking this little circle right here. So now when I send them somewhere, they're always in this formation, right? You can't change it. Like if I try to spread them out by holding down my right mouse button, you still can't change formation. If I don't have this selected and I hold down my right mouse button, I can change their shape, I can do whatever, right? So I'm fine with whatever formation they're in. Let's just put them in a forest, right? Away from harm. Away from harm, basically because your military strength, or how many units you have, is part of a factor of diplomacy. So by fighting this first few battles cleanly, you get better trade deals, you get better diplomacy points, etc., etc. There's impacts of battle everywhere in the game. So we have our heroes in the front, you have your spearmen here. So we gotta think about how we want to approach this fight. The enemy have their spearmen in the rear. As we said, we can sneak these guys, right? We can sneak these guys all the way over here and to flank their archer. That's a smart thing to do, actually. So let's call this group 1. Their job is to flank the enemy. These guys are units I want to give experience to, but I probably are not able to, mainly because these are fragile, right? Z Militia, although they're all well-rounded and very good against cavalry, are fragile units. Bad against archer, bad against melee. So I don't want to take losses here, so I'm going to actually just leave them kind of behind. The enemy don't have cavalry units in this battle, so their main job is kind of non-existent here. Archers, we just have to keep them outside of enemy range, enemy archer range and enemy melee range, and let them fire away and do damage. There is friendly fire in the game, so if you enemy unit and unit are clumped together and you're shooting at them, you will hit some of your units. It will happen. So try to avoid that because there's no point to kill your own troops. In most battle, this is a first battle, so it's a little different. In the most battle, when you're the attacking force and you don't have like trebuchets or siege weapon that give you superior range, the enemy is going to likely sit still and wait for you to come to them, because there's a battle timer. The attacking force has to beat the defending force within the timer. If you don't, it's considered a loss. This is, once again, this is battle realism disabled. I haven't played actually with it disabled yet, but apparently you can have tactical maps where you zoom all the way out or click this button to see it from an overview, and you can also pause. I don't like this when I play campaigns, but I guess for the purpose of this tutorials, I'm going to be playing with it so I can have more time to talk about things. This bar shows you, I believe, like total morale. That's my opinion of it. I haven't seen this in battle realism, but I guess the idea here is once you reduce them to 0, all the troops on the battlefield will rout. That's at least how it worked with old Total War games, I guess, with Shogun that I have experience playing. But let's get started. You notice here that despite them being the defending force, they're marching forward. First thing we're going to do is we're going to carefully make our troop go through the forest undetected. So what you can do here is hold down Shift and then use your right click to draw lines, to draw pathways. So I'm basically drawing a curvy line here, and then my unit will follow that as a command. Okay, so holding down Shift can see here more clearly. I can send command out like this. This is very useful when you're trying to flank enemy archers. These little alerts on above tells you that since you're a cavalry unit, you're scared of these spear units and archer units. Okay, so let's accept the duel. This basically is the honorable thing where the generals, okay, you're kind of in position already because they marched up. Let's get ready. The enemy troop will not fight you when you are dueling. You basically fight each other. You have active ability that does damage. Use them. I'm not using them yet because I want the splash damage to also hit the troops, but they're giving you space to duel. Okay. So archers are about to be in range. Zhang Fei goes up to attack enemy troops, swordmen, and then when you see the enemy archers fire like this, you hit this. Now everyone gets 100% block chance. That way you can stand here. You see the block chance is 100%. You're not going to lose any men to the arrows. And because it's on very hard, so basically, see the splash damage is this impact damage, right? You cleared out like a whole line. Right. The goal of these two champions is to, actually I didn't even use the horse cavalry, is to distract the archers so they don't get to utilize themselves. Okay, so these guys with a red-white flag are wavering, or routing. They're in the process of routing, but they're not completely routed. Oh, Guan Yu is not on horseback. This is actually dangerous. So generals are really strong. When they're dueling, they get off their horse, and then afterward they're not on their horseback, easily surrounded by enemy melee. Therefore, they can get killed pretty quickly. It's like death by 1,000 mosquito bites. So you want to be careful after duels where your general are. So see, now they went from a red flag to a clear, transparent white flag completely. Now they're completely routed. If you look at the morale bar on the battlefield, you essentially already won the battle. You can claim victory here, which is totally fine because you're the attacking force. In this battle, it's set up that if you win, you completely wipe out the enemy troops. Normally, if you win, what happens is whatever is left, some you will capture, some will escape. It's kind of automated. You still might see an enemy force afterward, but if you run them down before they can run to the edge of the map, which is by this black line, you kill them or you capture them. It's guaranteed. And as well as doing this, you give the experience to the troops that you want to give the experience to. Is when you automate this, it's spread out with all your troops. It's a little boring, but I like to just run them down with my generals and cavalry. You can also speed it up anytime by fast forward. And I haven't actually used the pause function yet. Yeah, so apparently you can pause, which is kind of interesting. Let's play it out, 3 times speed. I can change it back to normal until these guys finish hitting their guys. There's one unit here, there's only one guy left. Guan Yu is going to charge up and kill him. Okay, so we won that fight without taking any casualty. The key to not take casualty is to fully utilize your range advantage, right? If you have archers or trebuchets and you can do damage with projectiles rather than your flesh and sword, you're gonna have lower casualty. That's basically my belief in this game, and I prefer to not take casualty because it weakens your perceived strength with AI. It also wastes your turn because you have to replenish your troops. Sometimes I'd rather have the general take some damage than have the troops lose large amounts. It wasn't perfect. Kind of forgot about my cavalry even though I snuck them over. What you don't want to do is run your cavalry straight up like I ran the generals. If you notice, when your general ran up, the enemy archers didn't shoot at them, right? That's because the enemy archer, the AI's at least on hard difficulty, which is what this battle was on, to not waste arrows on targets that are either 100% range block chance. So once I activated that Liu Bei ability, the enemy archers also stop firing because they know it's waste of arrows. And also not to fire on generals because you're firing 120 arrows at a time, and they're only trying to hit one target. So that's perceived as waste of ammo. So they won't fire at you. Now this, of course, is does change. I have tried where I played a battle with just a general with no retinue. The enemy archer will fire at you because you're the only thing on the map they need to kill, so they don't think that's a waste arrow. That's something to remember. But because they don't shoot at the enemy generals, you can charge your generals up towards the enemy archers, and they will just run. They'll kind of try to get out of the way. And when they're on the run, they can't fire. That's when you want to run your cavalry up. You don't want to run your cavalry straight up into the arrow fire. You don't want them to hit the enemy infantry front line. You want to get a flank. And when you're getting a flank, if they're running up by themselves, as soon as they try to turn that corner and they're not face to face with the enemy archer where the shield has that block chance, you're getting shot from the back or from the side. Your block chance is less effective, right? And then you'll lose more troops. That's basically the idea here. So I talked about a lot of things in this battle. Hopefully, as I continue this series, I'll be talking less and less about these mundane things and talking more about focused on different terrain, different unit composition, and how to approach these battles. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Once again, please like, subscribe, and comment below. Let me know if this is a series you're interested in or any way I can improve this series. Just leave them in the comment below, and I will definitely get back to you and try to improve this series as I go. Thank you again for watching. Have a nice day. Bye.